Alright, English teacher friends. So I have another video for us where I'm going to use an Oscar-nominated short to show us how to pull the strings of my templates to write introductory paragraphs for FRQ1 and FRQ2, featuring the AP Literature and Composition exam. And I've been asked this question a lot. Do I instruct my Gen Ed students to tackle introductions the exact same way? And the answer is yes. So whenever I'm teaching an essay or doing a writing workshop centered on a work of literature, if we're doing literary analysis, this template is what I use. And then I know that teachers have further asked, would you do this with someone as young as ninth grade? And the answer is yes. So even though I am highlighting FRQ1 and FRQ2, this is how I would instruct any student to do an introduction for the purposes of literary analysis. So on the heels of our infamous octopus friend from the 2022 exam, I decided to grab some short films that basically get at this question: what is being represented by what? And that's ultimately the question that I pose when we do allegorical reads. What is being represented by what? So in this particular short called Lost and Found, we're not just talking about two crochet puppets, right, interacting and interfacing with each other. Symbolically, metaphorically, it represents a whole other story. So this particular short film is rife for a Socratic seminar or a fishbowl, a Harkness discussion, something of that nature, to get to the question of, what is the authorial intent? Why did the directors make this film? How do they construct meaning? And what's their purpose? What's their exigence for creating this? So I'm going to stick to the status quo, and especially those of you that are familiar with my other videos where I have featured or showcased Oscar-nominated shorts. It's the same process. So new film, same old process. So let's jump right in. As always, I think it's very important that we ask ourselves this question: what if we taught composition like Bob Ross teaches painting? And the thrust of that question gets us to this: the difference between assigning writing and teaching it. You are the expert writer in the classroom, being the lead teacher, so paint a couple of models and exemplars with your students. So see how my template works, get your head around it, and then try your hand at crafting a few introductions, because I feel that the more good quality writing a student sees, the more it demystifies the process. You couple that with a template, and you get consistency to the point where a student will intuitively and instinctually know how to approach writing an introduction for literary analysis every single time. So, all right, the question is this: how do I construct the introductory paragraph? And as always, for the purposes of expository writing, I tell my students and my teachers that you can declare or invert. Given that we are performing literary analysis for this, we are going to bypass the declarative thesis, which I use for rhetorical analysis. So for those of you that are familiar with my work, you know that every single time my students perform rhetorical analysis, they declare the thesis. And then for synthesis, argument, and persuasion, it's a 50-50 coin flip. You can declare or invert, and it's really contingent upon the phrasing of the prompt and how you're going to get to the essential question. But for literary analysis, we're always going to invert. So let's unpack what we're going to do here. I find that implicit in every prompt for the AP Literature exam, FRQ1 and FRQ2, implicit in those prompts are two hidden secret camouflaged questions. What is the authorial intent, and how does the author construct meaning? If students answer both of those questions while performing a correct read of the text, right, you can't really have any misreads, they're going to get the thesis point. and accurately read the thesis point. So what is the authorial intent, and how does the author construct meaning? So when we declare a thesis, you're going to begin with the thesis. Just boom, drop it. Immediately answer the question. Provide context and background. Sprinkle in some tier 2, manipulate those sentence constructs. And an introductory paragraph with my templates is always going to be 4 sentences long. But as I already said, we're not going to declare the thesis on this. We're going to invert. So let's spend a little bit of time unpacking what I mean by that. The very first 3 sentences of an inverted thesis are going to answer the question, what is the authorial intent? And I know that many teachers ask this question, and it's basically the exact same question. What is the universal theme? Right? So what is the authorial intent, or what is the universal theme? So spend 3 sentences given the context and background around that question. The thing that I really like to see my students be able to do is bust out some tier 2 level vocabulary. And what I mean by that is your average run-of-the-mill SAT level word. And then the big kicker is this, is to teeter-totter balance the tier 2 or the academic diction with some colloquial and vernacular. I think that's how you ultimately get the sophistication point. Couple that with sentence constructs. So for those of you that are familiar with my work, you know that I run my Word Study Academy and my Nuance Academy with my students, and I espouse the teachings of Strunk and White in their book Write It Right. They assert that there's 12 different ways to construct a single sentence. So you'll see my students be able to wield some complex sentences, but manipulate their syntax for the purposes of achieving voice rhythm and flow. Struggling and emerging writers often overuse 2 to 3 short, simple declarative or independent clause sentence constructs, so it reads very chop, 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 and I think that precludes them from getting the sophistication point. So pay attention to how my students are manipulating their syntax for variation, and then as always it's going to be 4 sentences long. The thesis is the 4th sentence, and we're going to answer the question, how does the author construct meaning? And there we're going to focus on the most salient literary terms and or devices that are featured in the short film Lost and Found. And through the Socratic seminar, the Harkness or the Fishbowl, students will have the answer to that question, unless you go cold on them and just have them write, which sometimes I like them to come up with their own interpretation. Sans moi, sans the class, and because we can't help each other on the exam. So here is one example. In effect, there are 3 relationship statuses. One is either single, involved, or entangled. Lost and Found dramatically explores the latter. Directors Goldie and Slabe metaphorically illustrate how codependent relationships ultimately diminish one, if not both, of the persons involved in an entanglement. And I really like that direct, very concise, get to it, nothing extraneous flow to this. They definitely get the thesis point, and we had great conversations in class about, what are Goldie and Slabe doing in this? A little dinosaur crochet puppet, gets entangled and ultimately becomes nothing but a pile of yarn. So within an expression of love and relationships, what kind of commentary are we making about love and relationships? And I think this student came up with a pretty dynamic interpretation of it. And that's one of the cool things about Lost and Found, is that there's multiple reads for this. So you can see there's 4 sentences here. Great vocab. I really like the flow of it. The student stays within his wheelhouse. It doesn't sound contrived. It doesn't sound pretentious. It's definitely a good teeter-totter balance of the academic without sounding overly pedantic which I like. And the sentence constructs are very good. I in particular take a look at that last sentence. Great flow, great rhythm, and everything is varied. So here's another one going to be done the exact same way. First three sentences, what is the authorial intent? Last sentence, how does the author construct meaning? Or in this case, directors. Regarding relationships, sometimes the merging of 1 plus 1 does not equal 2, right? Get to the universal theme. This, we kind of talked about how in certain couples, you get this unhealthy codependency, this entanglement where your identity just gets consumed by the other, or you sacrifice self in terms of forming this couple that erases the individual. And that's one read that many of my students had. Love is not always pure and can have entrapments that reduce individuals to a state of non-existence. In other words, some relationships are so invisibly toxic and codependent that one totally loses all sense of self and becomes a non-entity. Goldie and Slade metaphorically illustrate how this phenomenon unfolds through the dramatic interplay of two crochet puppets. So you use your literary terms in that last sentence. And, we debated even if this was an allegory, as we did with FRQ2 on the 2022 exam with regards to the octopus. Are we, are Goldie and Slade making, some allegorical social commentary about the nature of love and relationships in this piece? And I think that's debatable, and students can definitely defend a thesis if they go that route. So yet again, 4 sentences. I really like the vocab. Words like entrapment is really nice. I like invisibly toxic is very nice as well. And good sentence variety in terms of the flow, the rhythm, the voice. So it's all there. Definitely got the thesis point, and it's sophisticated enough for me. So here's another one. Couples often get so enmeshed and unhealthily codependent that one sense of self metaphorically disintegrate or dies. Sorry, I misread that. Metaphorically dies. So again, start with the universal truth, the universal theme, and that's kind of the gist, the thrust of the film. Even though love brings two lives together as one, the dynamics within the couple need not operate like a subtraction equation. But unfortunately, as we see with the dinosaur, utter infatuation for a partner can reduce one's purpose for existence to a state of nothingness. Last sentence, drop the terms. Goldie and Slade metaphorically explore the dangers of such enmeshments in their short film, Lost and Found. I think this is really good. So you can see here in 3, consistent examples, students just, pulling the strings of my template. How does the author construct meaning? What is the authorial intent? Wield it all together, right? 3 sentences plus 1 sentence. Invert the thesis, 4 sentences. Focus on that vocab without overdoing it, and focus on the sentence constructs. Here's one last one from a student that really struggled to get this down, but I think in the end with some revision they did a fair job. So what is the authorial intent? 3 sentences. For love to be true, one must be willing to sacrifice all sense of self. All too often, relationships do not work because one or both partners are too self-obsessed and engrossed to be of value to the other. Goldie and Slade metaphorically depict that in order for true love to exist, one must completely unravel the entanglement of their ego and be wholly available for their partner. The dinosaur is emblematic of the ideal lover, a selfless, non-ego driven partner willing to do whatever it takes to keep love alive. And I think that was really well done as well. So all 4 of these exemplars and models are approaching the template from the same approach. same sort of scaffold, same sort of guardrail, and they definitely got the thesis point. So I'm very curious to, hear from those that watch the video and do this exercise with their students, what kind of interpretations you come up with collectively in terms of authorial intent, and especially in terms of what Slave and Goldie are doing and why they created this piece to begin with. So to wrap up, know that I am offering my Teach It Right 5-week mastermind going forward through the National Writing Project as of August 9th, 2022. It's going to be offered through them. If you go to my webpage, www.teachinghowtowrite.com, you can get more information on the National Writing Project in this particular course. I know several people look to get that badge of approval for their professional development hours. And even though it's a 5-week course where we have 1-hour sessions for 5 weeks, you earn 10 credit hours, which is pretty cool. So I'll be doing some work with the National Writing Project going forward. I'm also going to be presenting at the National Council of Teachers of English this coming fall in Anaheim, California, with Tim Freitas and Brandon Abden, which I'm looking very much forward to. So if you want more information, check out the webpage. And if you're interested in these slides for your classroom use, reach out to me through email at teachingwritingcoach@gmail.com. Just specify what you're requesting, because I got a lot on my YouTube channel. So just to be clear, maybe a subject heading with lost and found in it would do the trick. So be well, happy teaching, and happy writing.